the Liberal Party is going to win now in the next election, most likely. And they were down.
He really does.
Tonight, isn't that going to make them more hostile to us and possibly
I'd rather deal with a Liberal than a
for China, closer to Canada, and that would really put us in a bind.
Canada is the only country, for example, in the Commonwealth that has constitutionalized the method for a province to leave. And it's the 1998 reference case of the Supreme Court of Canada that arose because of the referendum that was coming in Quebec.
How does Alberta's Premier, Danielle Smith, feels about the election results?
I'm disappointed. I think it was no surprise that I thought that the Conservatives were better aligned with the objectives of Alberta. I think people are feeling frustrated. I think they're feeling a bit hurt and betrayed that the rest of the country didn't quite see it the way that we did.
Hundreds gathered on the steps of the Alberta legislature today for a rally calling for Alberta to separate from Canada.
Alberta separating? I feel that question wasn't directly answered.
Well, not by me. I believe in Alberta's sovereignty within a united Canada. However, there is a citizen-initiated referendum process that if citizens want to put a question on a ballot and get enough of their fellow citizens to sign that petition, then those questions will be put forward. Again, I don't want to prejudge what a question might be, but not by our government.
You can't opt out of the Federation. You can't opt out of Canada, and we expect people to obey the law.
It seems like it's a bit of a phony war. We've got a 100% tax on EV vehicles from China that no one's buying in order to protect an EV industry in Ontario that doesn't exist. And in return, we are seeing punishment on pork and canola in our western provinces, which are products people do want. So I think the Chinese have been very targeted and direct in how they're trying to split our country up.
Okay, well, I'll tell you, as a British Columbian, I think it's going to be hard for Alberta to hit tidewater if they do actually separate. I mean, let's state the obvious here. But I do think there was some form of a referendum that just happened. It's called a general election.
Alberta doesn't need to get oil to tidewater, it just needs to get it to America. If Alberta separates, it'll probably join America because that's a smart thing to do. Mark Carney already said he's not going to get rid of Bill C-69, so our country is screwed for the next 4 years.
Considering we've had 10 years of terrible policy that have really impacted the ability of our province to attract investment, develop our resources, and get our product to market. And so what I'm going to do is keep an open mind. The new Prime Minister did sign an agreement with all of the provinces just prior to the election, committing to having economic corridors, including oil and gas pipelines, to get our product to market. The problem is that he also said he was going to keep all those terrible pieces of legislation that would continue to dampen the investment climate.
I don't think this guy gets it yet. He's going to have to work pretty hard to win over the Albertans, and I'm not sure it's going to happen. They are talking about sovereignty of their own. They create most of the wealth in Canada and distribute it to other provinces that don't have it, and they're a little pissed off.
The frustration with the federal government is strong here, is strong in Saskatchewan, is strong in Quebec. And so it's not just Alberta that has grievances and wants the government, the federal government, to honor the Constitution and to treat us as we're meant to be. We're meant to be equal partners in Confederation. We're meant to have our own exclusive areas of jurisdiction. We're not junior partners in this agreement. And so if we can reset that relationship, then we might be able to address some of those grievances and bring the temperature down. But I fully understand how Albertans are feeling. It's the way Canadians felt. Canadians felt like they had a partner in the United States. And then when we saw that we didn't, because of the tariff war that began, people felt hurt and betrayed. Well, we thought we had a partnership with the rest of the country. And the fact that we haven't been able to develop our resources, we haven't been able to build pipelines to the East Coast in particular. We've seen $170 billion worth of investment that has been quashed. That is what has left Albertans feeling hurt and betrayed. And I think everybody had hoped that we'd be able to turn over a new leaf. We may yet, but at the moment, the initial reaction is the one of disappointment.
Yeah, and yesterday he spoke about American betrayal. Are you interested in rebuilding relations with Canada? And if so, how?
No, well, I think we're going to have a great relationship. He called me up yesterday. He said, "Let's make a deal." You know, he was running for office. They both hated Trump, and it was the one that hated Trump, I think, the least that won. I actually think the conservative hated me much more than the so-called liberal. He's a pretty liberal guy. But no, I spoke to him yesterday. He couldn't have been nicer, and I congratulated him. You know, it was a very mixed signal because it's almost even which makes it very complicated for the country.
I'll tell you what I think. I think that over 300 MPs got elected because they stood on a platform to get our resources developed, to work with provinces to establish economic corridors, and to get our products to market. I think the NDP got crushed, the Greens got crushed, and the Bloc Québécois lost ground because they were opposed to that agenda. And so I would hope that the current Prime Minister understands that his mandate comes from moderate voters who actually want this province to be a genuine energy superpower and the country to be a genuine energy superpower. And so that's why I believe we saw the outcome that we got last night. It wasn't because they doubled down on extremist environmental policies that would crush our industry. It was the opposite. They depicted themselves as wanting to create a new approach, one that would be in sync with what all the provinces are asking for, and that's what I'll be asking the Prime Minister to do.
Meanwhile, in the United States,
Ended the radical left war on American energy. We've stopped their crusade on coal. Did you see what I did the other day? Clean, beautiful coal. I said, you're not allowed to use the word coal unless you say clean, beautiful coal. You know, China uses coal. They're opening up a coal plant every week, a massive coal plant. But we're not allowed to use it, but now we are because last week I gave it absolute, total approval. And you know what I don't give approval to? Those stupid windmills that go round and round and round.
So we want, number one, for us to see the Prime Minister live up to his promise to guarantee access for oil and gas pipelines and economic corridors. We need a repeal of Bill C-69. You can't have a process that goes on forever, takes 10 years and billions of dollars, and there's no end in sight. It's called the No More Pipelines Act for a reason. There's too many barriers to getting approvals.
If we are going to build, and I am a proponent of building big energy infrastructure in this country, but if we are going to build big energy infrastructure in this country, there is a we in that. It is not imposed. It is not imposed by the federal government. It's not imposed by an opposition politician. It's not imposed by a company. It requires the support in Energy East of Quebec, the other provinces that are affected. It requires the support, the free, prior, and informed consent of First Nations with respect to C-69. What I've also been clear about is the ability under C-69, not as it was, but as it is, and the Minister of Natural Resources, Mr. Wilkinson, is here, as it is under his leadership. We have an ability to rely on, as appropriate, impact assessments that are performed at different levels of government. And that is part and parcel of how we can make this work.
There's no future for oil and gas, at least in Quebec and probably everywhere. And this has to be said and protected.
We want to see a lift on the tanker ban off the BC coast. You can't. What's the point in building a pipeline if you're not going to be allowed to load it on a ship to see it go overseas? We want them to eliminate the emissions cap. An emissions cap, especially with the aggressive targets they were talking about, is actually a production cap. And it's not just us saying that. There are multiple different independent organizations and analysts who have said that. We know that they need to scrap the clean electricity reg. Same thing. If you put unreasonable expectations about net zero power grids in place, you're just going to create uncertainty in the market, lack of investment, and unreliability in your power grid. We want to make sure that they're ending the prohibition on the use of plastics. They want to phase out single-use plastics. We need them to abandon the net zero car mandate. This is an issue that is of some urgency because in Alberta, we're supposed to be buying 20% of our cars are supposed to be net zero vehicles by January 1st. There just isn't the production capacity right now. It just means people are going to have to queue up in order to be able to buy cars. It makes no sense. We want to make sure that we retain the oversight on the industrial carbon tax. We've had carbon pricing since 2007. Our system's working well. The industry supports it. There's no reason for the federal governments to intervene. And we also need our companies to be able to celebrate the reductions that they're making in emissions. Right now, that's illegal. It's called greenwashing, and it's a criminal code violation. So all of these things, when we put them on the table, the federal conservative leader said, yeah, seems reasonable. And so that's what I'm moving forward with.
By the way, this is a very important statistic. All of the Western provinces receive zero, and I mean absolutely zero payments. Everything from all of these three provinces send billions upon billions of dollars to the east.
Let's make some reasonable changes. reset the relationship, and then let's get on with having Alberta continue to be the powerhouse of the economy in Canada.
Danielle Smith, Alberta's Premier, has proven to be a steady voice of reason amid national and global tensions. Behind the scenes, she's been involved in ongoing negotiations with Donald Trump's circles, testing a range of diplomatic and business-friendly approaches, not for headlines, but for the good of Alberta and Canada. Whether it's energy, trade, or provincial autonomy, her goal has remained clear: put Alberta first while strengthening Canada's position. And now, with talk of a possible referendum on Alberta's separation gaining traction, the stakes couldn't be higher. Do you expect major changes ahead? And do you believe her approach is the leadership this moment demands?